Hey guys, you never would have guessed it, but I'm back with more scary Reddit stories today. And I had kind of run out of ideas on what to do in Minecraft, so I asked my Discord and it was recommended that I build a fire watch. Shout out to Elliot for the great idea, and if you guys want to decide what I do next in Minecraft, join the Discord, let me know. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into the first story. It's from r/nosleep from user BadAndyTheRed. And guys, I can tell by the title this one's gonna be nuts. I went camping with my girlfriend's family. Things were going fine until the blood sacrifice. Oh my gosh. It changed. Somehow, it all changed. I can't believe it, but I can't deny what I saw with my own eyes. Something happened here. Something impossible. Summer and her brother knew what it was. They called out to it, and something answered. I hoped it might have just been a fever dream, but now I have to reconcile the truth. It's all real. It's all here right now, and worst of all, it spoke to me. Just the other day, I was heading out on a camping trip with my girlfriend Summer. We had met at school. Both of us were taking the same environmental science course, and we hit it off. We started dating shortly after, and things had been going great. Before long, I was convinced I had met the girl of my dreams. She was so kind, thoughtful, funny, and beautiful. I was head over heels. When we discussed our families, I learned that hers was very enigmatic. I had not gotten to meet any of them yet, but she told me they were naturalists who owned land all across the state, including cabins and camping places around the Olympic Peninsula. She asked me if I'd like to go camping with her, to a place her family used to visit often. I was thrilled at the chance to spend more time with her, especially alone and in the majesty of nature. I was even considering using the opportunity to propose. We set out on the 3-hour drive to Leshy Ridge. The time spent driving was not quite as comfortable as I expected it to be. This was mainly because it was not just Summer and I going to the campsite. Her brother Sean was coming with us too. I was a little flustered when I found out, but Summer just smiled at me and said, "I can't say no to family. Come on, please. I promise it'll be worth it." I had given in and agreed, not wanting to disappoint her. I knew I would have to meet some of her family eventually, so I figured I could get to know her brother on this trip, even if I hadn't planned for it. Despite the discomfort of going camping with someone I had never met, I wanted to show Summer I could get along with her family. The drive was pleasant enough, if not a little awkward. Sean was very reserved and didn't respond with much beyond a grunt when I tried speaking with him. I tried to get him talking as we drove, but he shrugged and ignored me. Summer played it off and just smiled when I looked at her for reassurance. I let it go and kept driving. We started to ascend higher into the mountains, and the road began to vanish, replaced by rough rocks and dirt. It was strange, but as we moved, I thought I saw the green sheen of trees above us start to look oddly muted and colorless. I wondered if it was just an optical illusion from looking out beyond the skyline and near the sun. I blinked hard and focused on the road again. The winding path finally led to a small clearing with wide open space and a larger plateau looming overhead. The area was covered in grass and trees, though the same strange gray tinge lingered here as well. Before I could ask for confirmation, Summer shouted, "Here it is," she giggled, and before the van had fully stopped, she leapt out. She twirled around in a flourish, and Sean hopped out with a grunt and slammed the door. As the two embraced the energy of the area, I found myself a bit puzzled. They were acting like this was some great spot, but I had a hard time agreeing with the sentient. The trees looked oddly dull. The normal vibrant green hues seemed lost, like they'd forgotten that an evergreen was supposed to be just that. The lack of background sounds bothered me as well. The normal sounds of the forest were missing. It was desolate and barren. There was no birdsong to provide the normal pleasant backdrop of an area like this. The whole place just seemed like it was caught in a dead zone. I looked back at Summer and didn't say what I was thinking. I didn't want to say anything to offend her, since she had mentioned this place was important to their family. I just couldn't understand why. I tried to ignore my apprehension and distract myself by unloading the van. Summer approached me, likely suspecting my concern, and pulled me aside. "It means a lot to me that you're doing this. The camping trip might seem sudden, but it'll be worth the sacrifice. I know it might seem weird with Sean here, but this place..." She paused and looked thoughtfully around before continuing. "It's special. It means a lot to my family. I'd do anything to protect it and them." I'm just so happy you can be here with us now, to help us." She leaned in, kissed my cheek, and then went back to dancing around the campground. I was so happy to see her like that, dancing beautifully without a care in the world, that I didn't even consider the true meaning of her words. I finished unloading our stuff and was ready to get started on the tents. I asked Sean if he needed help with his, but he scoffed and just wandered off into the trees. I was about to call after him when Summer grabbed my arm. "Just let him go. He likes to explore. Who knows, he might come back with a sunnier attitude." She smiled, and I couldn't tell if she really believed that or was just trying to placate me. I stopped worrying when she leaned in and kissed me, then whispered, "Set up the tent, and when Sean is asleep tonight, we might see what else we can do." She lingered for a moment before turning around, grabbing the cooler, and pulling out some supplies. "But for now, I'm gonna make us some lunch. Would you help grab some smaller kindling sticks so we can get a fire going and I can make us something?" I agreed and set out to find some. As I moved around the perimeter of the campground, I was struck by the eerie effect I had noticed earlier when we arrived. The only sound I could hear was the crunching of overly dry leaves and desiccated branches. The effect was unnerving, and I paused to listen more closely to a strange sound I thought I heard nearby. The sound had stopped, but I heard a voice then. I crept along a small trail further into a thicket overgrown with brittle blackberry vines. I saw Sean kneeling down on the ground in a small clearing. It seemed like he was talking to someone or something. "I don't know if I can do it. I've never done that before. I know Summer has, but I'm not like her. I know, I hear the family too. I just don't know." He paused and suddenly looked up from whatever he was talking to. I was too embarrassed to be caught snooping, so I dropped to my stomach and held still. I listened closely and heard Sean rise. I lifted my head just enough to see him looking in the other direction. He muttered something under his breath and started walking away, fortunately picking a different path than the one that would have led him right on top of me. When I was satisfied he was gone, I let out a deep breath. I didn't know who he was talking to, but the whole thing was strange. I collected a few of the dried out sticks I had trampled to get out of there and returned to camp. As I was helping Summer start the fire, I saw Sean had set up his tent and was inside it already. I considered the strange conversation he was having with himself. I thought at the time he must just be a bit eccentric. I shrugged it off and tried not to let the weird incident bother me. By then, the fire was going, and Summer had started grilling some bratwurst for us. I was starving and sat down in one of the chairs we had set around the fire and relaxed. With the soft crackling of the fire and the smell of the smoke, I was finally able to ignore the odd ambiance of the place and just enjoy myself. Just when I was finally relaxed, I heard a loud crunching noise from nearby. I looked over to the clearing by where the van was parked and couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was an animal, a raccoon by the shape and markings of its tail. However, that indication was all I had to go on, because the thing I saw standing there twitching unnaturally didn't look like any raccoon I had seen before. Its tail still had some fur and the telltale rings, but its upper body was a mangle of exposed muscle and soft tissue. It looked like it had been partially skinned, but was still moving around somehow. The flesh on its snout was peeled back, revealing a gruesome rictus of sharp teeth, and the eyes seemed horribly bloodshot. I paused for a long moment, just staring at the thing. I looked over at Summer, and she had spotted it as well. She was standing still, waiting to act. The small animal stepped forward, and its tail rose up high. It turned itself to a side profile and looked directly at us, hissing in a sound that was terrible with how unlike a normal raccoon it was. The thing looked half dead and rabid. I was afraid that in that moment it would just charge at us and start attacking. I slowly stood up and tried to put myself between it and Summer. I wanted us to get into our tents since the path to the van was blocked. The thing looked dangerous, and whatever it was afflicted with, I didn't want any of us to get. Before we could do anything else, the hideous raccoon turned to look at something in the distance. Then it hissed and ran off into the woods. In the next moment, it was gone, and I was trying to make sense of what had just happened. "What the hell was that?" I finally asked, breaking the silence. Summer let out a breath and relaxed, then shrugged apologetically. "I don't know. I know a lot of them live in these woods, but that one looked worse than most. The illness brought on by pollution might be the cause. That's why my family's work is so critical. To help revive these places so that the creatures that live here can thrive. She gestured all around us and had an oddly serene look on her face, despite the encounter. She looked back at me and smiled apologetically. I'm sorry, I know you must be worried. If there are any more, we'll be prepared. I think Sean brought some deterrents. She went up to his tent and told him what happened. He emerged a moment later, holding a long rod which sparked at the end, and I realized it was some kind of cattle prod. In his other hand, he held a large hunting knife. Which way did the thing go? He asked with a more disturbing force of will than I had ever heard him use before. Summer tried to calm him down. It's okay, Sean, we don't need to go kill it. Just keep the prod handy in case it comes back to scare it off. Geez, calm down, she scoffed at him, and he looked disappointed. After a while, I finally calmed down when I was satisfied the deranged creature was gone. It was starting to get dark, and I stepped away to take a leak. I was still close enough to hear Summer and Sean talking about something. I didn't want to pry, but I overheard bits of what she was saying to him. Come on, Sean, I know you don't like it out here, but it gets better. I'm sorry you feel that way, but it's for the family. The conversation grew quiet, and I finished up. At the time, I thought that Summer was trying to encourage her brother. Eventually, when it was near full dark, I was ready to call it a day. Summer emerged from the tent, wearing her hiking gear. I was confused and asked her what was going on. She grinned back at me and said, "The stars are so bright out tonight. It would be amazing to see them from the lookout. There's a small plateau just up there, only a 10-minute hike. Come on, I know it's dark, but it'll be worth it. I promise." Before I could ask why at night or if Sean would be coming too, Sean unzipped his tent and walked out, holding his cattle prod and a flashlight, with the large knife tucked into a vest pocket. Summer was rummaging in her bag and produced an antique lantern I had never seen before. She lit it reverently, and the intricate shapes carved into the sides cast luminous shapes across the campground. The light show distracted me from my concern about venturing off into the dark, and I followed her out of camp. "Come on, let's go to the lookout," she called out and began to sing. The moon is shining bright, and the stars glow in our hair. The nighttime's music's magic, and their spirits in the air. The forest trees will guide our way, imperious and tall, to lead the way on path and trail to answer family's call. Summer kept dancing and singing, swinging the lantern in arcs that shone its warm light on the few shadowy spots untouched by the bright moonlight. We walked on, and I found out from Summer that this hike at night was another family tradition. I had concerns, but I figured she knew this place pretty well, so I felt a bit better about heading up to the lookout in the middle of the night. As we walked, I saw she was right about the stars. They burned brilliantly above, and the serene backdrop removed the subtle aura of decay that this place had in the daytime. I started to feel a bit more optimistic about the trip. I saw something odd in the distance, about 100 feet from the small area where the climb to the lookout was. It looked like a small house or cabin. I called it out as we walked. "Hey, what's that building?" Sean and Summer both paused, and Sean aimed a light towards the structure. To my surprise, he answered me. It's just the old family cabin. No one has stayed there recently. It's pretty run down, but hopefully it'll be made whole again. Our family used to stay there all the time. Maybe they can again soon. Come on." He waved me on, and as we passed the cabin more closely, I saw it was in ruins. The ceiling had collapsed in places, and the wood was rotted and decayed all over. It was a wreck, and I figured they would have to do some serious renovation before any of their family members would be living there again anytime soon. As I looked at it, I felt something strange. The building felt wrong somehow, like it shouldn't be there at all. The entire place held an intangibly ancient quality. I suddenly felt very nervous about camping so close to it. I was about to say something to Summer, but she put an arm around me and leaned her head on my shoulder and guided me along the path to the lookout, leaving my questions unanswered. We made it up the incline to the plateau, and I was impressed by the cloudless sky and shining stars above. I could see why this place was so special to their family, and for a short time, I was grateful that they had included me in this tradition. If Sean had not been there, I would have considered proposing to Summer, but I never expected what happened next. Summer reverently cradled the lantern and was using a small piece of chalk to draw lines on the ground while singing something. It was odd at first. I thought it was another song, but it had low tones and rhythms that were more like a chant. Sean had not moved onto the plateau. He just stood by the trail leading back down. He was holding the cattle prod and the knife now. He seemed to have an anguished look on his face, like something bad had just happened. Ooh, buddy, I got a feeling something bad is about to happen. I was confused by what was going on, and then Summer spoke. O great spirit that dwells in this place, we supplicate ourselves to you. We offer you the lifeblood and vitality of humanity, so that you may continue to bless us and watch over this sacred place and our family. Eternal peace for this place, eternal peace to the offering. You have been chosen to become one with this place, to become family. Blessed be. She had finished drawing the strange markings on the ground and looked up at me solemnly. I'm so sorry. I really did care for you, but this place, this sacred land, we need to take care of it. Look around us, it's dying. Only an offering can restore the vitality that was lost. You have to understand. Please don't resist. Okay guys, so I take it we're all on the same page here on we are booking it into the woods, and even if we run into the creepy skinned raccoon thing again, it's still better than being around these people. Anyways, let's continue. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I finally snapped out of the shock paralysis I was in and responded. Wait, Summer, what the hell is this? Some type of cult ritual? You guys can't be serious. You're just pranking me, right? It has to be. I asked with a slight laugh to try and see how they reacted. Summer's face was still grave, and Sean had walked closer to us. His hands gripping the weapon so tightly I could see his knuckles turning white. No, stay back, I shouted out vainly as Summer just nodded while looking past me and at Sean. Strike true, for the Sylvian, for the family. Don't hesitate, she shouted. I turned back to see Sean moving toward me at speed. He held out the prod and it sparked to life. Don't struggle, this can all be over soon, he said with a hesitant mixture of fear and aggression. I held out a hand and tried to discourage him, but he pressed on, and I leapt back and suffered a shock as the prod made contact with me. He lunged forward and I fell back, dodging a clumsy stab with the knife. Summer was standing still, watching us and chanting quietly. I felt numbing pain, and my body convulsed as the prod was driven into my ribs. The pain was excruciating, but it didn't hold me as long as a proper taser might have. I saw the reluctance in Sean's eyes, and he actually closed them while stabbing the knife down at me. I was able to regain enough motion to roll away, and when the knife crashed down onto the ground, I leaned back and kicked him hard in the face. Sean went flying, and I heard the satisfying sound of his face crunching and a tooth flying. Summer stopped chanting and gasped, as if she was surprised I had resisted. I turned back to her and saw a look of contempt on her face. You need to stop, she shouted indignantly. Can't you see what has happened to this place? It needs to be reinfused with life. You can be that life. You can save us all. She lunged forward and tried to grapple me. I pushed her away just in time to avoid a stab by Sean, who had recovered. I saw he had dropped the cattle prod, and I dove forward to collect it before either of them could. When he lunged again, I stabbed the prod out and struck his neck. He fell forward and dropped the knife again. I bent down to collect it, but Summer kicked out hard and struck me in the side. I rolled over and tried to get up, but my head was struck by a hard stomp. I nearly passed out from the impact. I had to move. I knew I was in trouble. I saw Sean looming over me. He spat out some blood, and the reservation on his face from earlier was gone. Nothing but anger remained. Summer was getting up and moving out of the way to give him a clear shot. As he prepared to stab the knife down, I aimed the prod at Summer's leg, and the shock caused her to collapse on top of me. There was a terrible moment where I heard the slicing sound of flesh and knew someone had been stabbed. I felt nothing but the pain of the wind being knocked out of me. I looked up to see Summer. Her eyes were wide and pleading. We both looked down to see the blossoming blood stain on her, and I looked past her to see Sean holding the knife with a look of shocked horror. He had stabbed her in the back. He backed away and began crying. Summer rolled off of me, and I scrambled away and stood up. I looked around and saw the odd drawings of the ground begin to glow, and Summer's blood seemed to be absorbed by all the impossible characters. I was stunned, but was reminded of the danger when I regarded Sean. I held out a hand and tried to control the situation, though I did not really think he would just listen to me. Sean was pulling his hair and hyperventilating. He looked seconds away from a mental breakdown. "Sean," I said as calmly as I could muster, "you don't have to do this. I know you're scared, but I think you were forced here, right?" I asked, trying to sound as empathetic as possible. He just shook his head, and the look of fear faded away to reveal a snarl of unsuppressed rage. "You," he murmured, and then his voice grew louder. "You killed her. It's your fault. You should have just stayed down and died. We need to bring this place back. You need to die." He charged at me like a rabid animal, and when I tried to hold the prod out to stop him, it did nothing. He barreled on and took me down in a clumsy tackle. I rolled along with him to try to take the weapon, but we rolled too far and we both launched off the edge of the plateau. I should have died from that fall. I still don't know how I didn't. I remember falling, but I ended up landing on some type of natural outcropping and just rattling my bones. Sean fell down much further, though all I really remember was the blood-curdling scream as he did. I woke up in a haze, and I could barely move. I think I had a concussion from the force. I hit my head when I landed, but I was just grateful to be alive. It was daytime, and I didn't know how long I had been out. I was incredibly thirsty and felt dehydrated and sallow, so it might have been for hours, if not days. I managed to find a steep path that led back down to the main trail. I had to get out of there and get help. I hustled back to the campground and passed a disturbing sight. There were faded bloodstains on the ground and a human outline in the dirt near where Sean would have landed, but nobody was there. I shuddered at the thought that he might still be out there hunting me, but he couldn't have survived that fall. Then I noticed the odd emergence of a large root cluster that seemed to crowd around the imprint his body had left. It seemed like they were surging and lapping at something, like they had a terrible sentience I could not guess. I shuddered when I stared at the morbid sight. I suddenly felt sure that Sean was really dead. I shambled along through the forest, and when I got back to the campground, I was stunned. The entire area seemed healthy now. It was all green and vibrant. I could hear birds singing. Animals moved all throughout the woods, and the gray pallor was gone. Just the other day, the place looked like a dead zone, but now it was alive again. I was about to leave when a nagging thought made me stay. I walked off in a daze, wandering from the campground. I let out an exhausted laugh as I considered the insanity I had just witnessed. I had planned to stay there with the girl I loved, only to have seen her die after trying to kill me. And now there I was, wandering, half dead in the woods that were so important to her family, alive and well, just like my surroundings. I marched on, up the trail into the plateau. I looked out over the forest and saw the same as before. Dried blood where summer had fallen, but no body. The strange markings on the ground were gone, and I stood there in confused horror, trying to make sense of what had happened. Suddenly, I felt a strange breeze that carried across the area. In the rush of air, I thought I heard an odd tune as it swept over me. A tune I had heard sung for the first time by Summer when we walked under the stars. But the strangest part was that the more I listened, the more it sounded like her. I shuddered and left that place, running back down the trail to try to leave. I ran on, but my pace slackened when I saw the family cabin and couldn't believe my eyes. The wrecked building was restored somehow. It looked brand new. I inched closer and rubbed my eyes, unable to believe what I was seeing. As I looked over the impossible change, I felt a chilling presence pervade the area, and the door creaked open. There was a light inside, shining just beyond the corner of the now open door. I heard a familiar voice creep into my ear from everywhere and nowhere. "Come inside, join the family, and stay with us, forever." My stupor broke, and I ran. I ran madly out of that impossible forest, leaving Summer, her brother, and the entire nightmare behind me. I don't know what really happened to them. They must have died, but where had the bodies gone? Then I remembered Summer's words, her pledge to the spirits. Human blood to renew that sacred place. The site had gotten its blood, just not mine. It was definitely beautiful for now, but I'll never go back there. I'm going to tell the police about what happened, and hopefully they won't arrest me for murder. Someone needs to know, someone needs to be warned, that the family is still there. For lack of better words, guys, that was creepy as hell. And like, what is telling the police gonna do? They're just gonna throw you in a psych ward and evaluate you and, I don't know, poke you with needles and stuff. Being that there's not really evidence of the crime at the crime scene, why tell anybody, you know? It just all depends on who knew you were going on that camping trip, I suppose. Anyways, let me know what you guys thought about that one. Let's go ahead and get on with the next story. It's from r/no-sleep from user Bilbo Cheated. My workplace started a compliment jar. Now no one has any privacy. I don't think I've had any privacy for a few weeks. I work out of a third-party call center that operates out of a long shut-down department store in a walled-off section of a half-shuttered mall. The windows are all boarded up and we have to use the metal doors in the back. We handle customer service for multiple businesses. So one moment I could be helping a woman reboot her Wi-Fi, and the second that call ends, I mean that literally, I'll be helping a man reschedule his refrigerator delivery. If there's one saving grace to this job, it's the variety. For many though, that isn't enough to make up for the fact that we only get a 15-minute lunch and a cumulative 10-minute break time, including bathroom breaks. You want to make sure you use it because it can't be carried over to the next shift. But you get written up for going over the allotted break time. Turnover was so bad that experienced reps were spending more time training new reps than taking calls. Management started calling it a measurable loss of productivity. One coworker of mine, Sharon, sort of acts as our de facto HR. The branch can't even hold a legitimate HR employee, which should tell you a lot. Sharon's a middle-aged woman who used to work in social work, but this unfortunately paid better. A few weeks ago, she took it upon herself to fix the turnover problem. Her solution? A compliment jar where we write nice things about one another, and once a week, Sharon opens and reads them to everyone during the shift. She hoped that it would boost morale and get employees talking to one another outside the confines of work. Everyone groaned at the idea of another task to complete for the week, but she assured us that participation was encouraged but not at all mandatory. She just wanted everyone's hard work to be seen. At the end of the first week of her new experiment, Sharon gathered us all around and stood behind her desk. She reached her hand into the jar and pulled out the first folded up strip of paper and read it aloud. Tim is always patient with the assholes. I wasn't really sure who Tim was, and by the squeaking chairs and silence, I don't think many of us did. Someone finally broke the silence with a little clap. No one knew how to act after each compliment was read aloud, but in the end, we resorted to half-assed clapping between compliments like, Alice makes the best coffee in the break room. Thank you, Emma, for fixing my headset. If you need to troubleshoot a TV, you can always count on Blake. People didn't really know how to act when their names were called either. Some stayed in their seats, others stood and gave an awkward wave to the crowd of colleagues. The whole thing seemed performative to me at the time, and I thought this would die out quickly. Sharon always took the jar home with her in the evening. A few days after the first reading, Sharon walked past my desk with the jar tucked under her arm. Bill, how do you think this is going? I looked around at the busy office, and then back to Sharon. Well, no one is crying, she laughed. I know all of this is corny, she said, but people are miserable here. We get screamed at for 8 hours, then we go home and worry about the next day, wondering if anyone would notice if we didn't come back. Management would notice. Only if the call queue backs up. You think this will fix that? I asked as I pointed to the jar. There was no way in hell this office could keep that going. She shrugged. Maybe it'll get people to at least look at each other. By the next reading, I thought I was right when the first few were basically just praise for always being on time for work. It looked like the compliments were getting lazier. We had already run out of nice things to say to one another, and we were just grasping at straws to find something to add. Then there was, if you think you're on a tough call, just look over at Josh. That one got a laugh out of me because Josh always seems stressed out of his mind. After that, more ended up being funny. Madison, I love how your chair squeaks in rhythm with the hold music when you need a little break on the line. Sharon seemed so proud because it seemed this initiative was actually going to take off. To her credit, it really did seem like the office was a brighter place. There were more conversations between people on their breaks and just a lighter general mood in the office. Over the next week, I found some of the conversations at work to be extremely awkward, but it was better than before. Anything was better than nothing. On Wednesday, David came up to me while I was getting a cup of coffee that Alice had brewed for everyone. "Are you having to leave home earlier to get here on time?" I finished my sip, cleared my throat, and asked, "I'm sorry?" "I mean, with all that road work on Laurel Street, do you have to leave for work earlier?" Now, I know I didn't tell him where I lived. I only knew his name was David because he had a tag with his name on his cubicle. But the roadwork 2 streets down did delay me, and it was extremely annoying. "Yeah, do you live around there too?" "No, just read about it in the paper." David was a strange guy. Maybe I had mentioned my street before. The third week, Sharon confidently announced the reading of the compliments. As she unfolded the first sliver of paper, she paused, furrowed her brow, and then chuckled before reading. "I'm happy that Alice got her oil changed over the weekend. That sound was really starting to bother me." The regular clapping commenced as Sharon looked up at the crowd. "Is that an inside joke or something?" No one responded, so she continued. "Tim, your son really seemed to enjoy the clown at the birthday party last week. Elizabeth, your stylist was so right to suggest that color. I'm so happy you changed your mind in the chair." "Blue curtains were the way to go, Alex. Much better than the green, especially with that rug. We gotta talk about the new bedspread, though." Each one, Sharon tried to laugh off. I'm so happy that this has led to some after-hours friendships. Sharon pulled the next slip and hesitated as she skimmed it. She frowned as she stared at the slip, looked up at the crowd in disbelief, and then back at the paper in her hand. "This one is just for me," she said. Annoyed sighs filled the room as she searched for the next compliment. When my name was called, I was jolted to attention. "Bill, I love how you were so careful when you water the tomatoes in your vegetable garden. I think spraying some cayenne pepper in the water will work better than the chicken wire." My fingers became numb and my chest felt hollow. I've never spoken to anyone here about my garden, and I've never posted about it anywhere. At the end of the reading, as everyone was rolling or shuffling back to their cubicles, Sharon tried to raise her voice above the noise. "From now on, let's try to keep these workplace appropriate." On my way home, I checked my mirrors for anyone following me. I checked my fence for cameras or loose boards. Nothing. I monitored the jar this whole week, and I saw no one put in a compliment. But every morning, there are a few more in the jar. I wasn't the only one shaken by an intrusive message. The office has been quieter. People are hiding their phones and closing laptops as others walk by. There's less bathroom traffic, and people are taking fewer breaks than ever before. I even noticed a few people driving different cars to work than I'd remembered. It can't be just one person. I have my suspicions about a few. Of course, there was David. He knew where I lived somehow. Then there was Sharon. She always took the jar home with her. The only other weird conversation was with Ted, who told me that he had thought peppers would grow better in my garden. When I asked if he was the one who left me the compliment, he laughed it off. "No, I just heard about the tomatoes, and I thought we were in more of a pepper climate. That's all." I tried to talk to Alice when I saw her at the vending machine, staring at the rows of snacks, deciding what was going to get her through the rest of the afternoon. "You know this isn't normal, right?" I said. She tapped her card on the machine and began to punch in her numbers. "The compliments," I continued. "You've heard it. The curtains, your oil change, my garden. People are following each other." Her snack fell. As she bent down to retrieve it, she whispered, "Don't." "Don't what?" She stood up and looked at me, her eyes darting to mine and then past me and back. "Don't make people think I'm talking to you about this." "Alice, please," she said, "don't make it worse for me." That afternoon, I caught Blake following me. I pulled into my driveway, parked, and got out of my car. He pulled in and then began to back up like he was just using it to turn around. I motioned for him to roll down his window and yelled, "Blake, what the hell?" He rolled his window an inch as he pulled off and yelled, "I was just trying to find something nice to say." I was dumbfounded. Did he really think that was appropriate? The day before the next reading, I decided to write my first real compliment. I wanted to prove a point. I folded it and dropped it into the jar. Blake, I wrote, I love how determined you are to find compliments, even if you will follow people home to do it. I thought it would be read and everyone would understand how out of hand this has gotten. That night, I got a call from Sharon. Hello? Hey, Bill. She was keeping her voice low. I know you're upset, but you can't start writing stuff like that. Sharon, Blake followed me home. He said he just wanted to find something to put in the jar. This has gotten out of hand. I'm trying to stop this. That's what everyone says. You need to stop this. After a few seconds of silence, Sharon said, I want to, Bill, but the regional office won't let me. They want to implement jars in other locations. Productivity has spiked at our branch, and turnover is almost non-existent. But, Bill, listen, I have the jar at my house, and I'm screening all the slips. You got one. And? It says, Bill, I love how you inspected your fence the other day. It's important to take pride in what we have. I can't remember the rest of the conversation. I just stopped listening to what I was hearing and prepared for the next day. I actually drafted this last night, talking about how I wasn't going to go to readings anymore just to avoid the whole thing, but I decided not to send it. I didn't want to give them anything for today's reading. This morning, I walked into work and everyone was already sitting, chairs pushed together in anticipation like they were pigs at a trough, smiles on their faces. Sharon began with, I asked us to keep things workplace appropriate. I went through all these last night. Other than a few complimenting others on their new cars, I can't read any of these. Some booed, and a few stood and shouted that she was censoring our positivity. Sharon argued for a bit with the crowd and began to step away from the desk. As she did, Madison pulled the jar from her and took Sharon's place. Sharon kept walking out the door. Madison began. You were so brave deleting their number, Emma, even if you did end up putting it back in your phone later on. Josh practiced the best apology in his car before he went inside the apartment. Madison, I think it's so sweet that you still sleep on your husband's side of the bed. Aw, guys, that's so sweet. Thank you for thinking of me, she continued, and I was happy to see we were almost finished. Madison went to put the lid back on the jar. Oops, found a couple of stragglers. Sharon, you were so brave to leave before we were finished. I love how much faith you have in your breaks. Silence. I noticed some people glancing toward the metal doors. Others looked around, taking note of who seemed most uncomfortable. Okay, everyone, last one for the week, Madison said. Bill, I love how you still think strangers can help, even when Sharon can't. Some laughed and cheered, while others simply watched me. I'm not sure if all this time their cheers are for the recipient or for the writer. I'm back home from my shift. I saw a strip of paper caught in my chicken wire. I bent down and grabbed it. Bill, I love how careful you are about locking your door. Most people forget the kitchen window. I looked up at my window and saw the blinds move. I ran inside to find Blake in my kitchen. He looked embarrassed, like I'd caught him stealing copy paper again. Get out of my house. He smiled and said, Your voice carries so well. I stepped towards him, and he stepped towards the door. Excellent posture, he said, very protective of your property. He slipped out the door. As he walked off, he looked over his shoulder and said, See, plenty of nice things to say. I can't decide what to do. I can't get a hold of Sharon. Her phone is going straight to voicemail now. And if anyone from work is here reading this, I guess I should add a compliment. Sharon, thank you for the compliment jar. I know you just wanted to help. Morale has never been higher. Well, that one was very uncomfortable. I really liked the story, and that was phenomenal writing, don't get me wrong, but, really just makes you look over your shoulder. Anyways, that's all the scary Reddit stories in Minecraft I have for you today. If you liked today's video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe, as it does help me out greatly. As always, huge shout out to my channel members for supporting the channel. If you guys do want to further support the channel, that link's going to be in the description. However, it is not at all required, completely optional. With that said, I will see you tomorrow.